March 28, 1911. Rock Island, Arsenal, Illinois. The morning sun climbed over the Mississippi River as military procurement officers gathered in a testing facility that would witness a demonstration destined to change American military history forever. In their hands rested evaluation forms for a pistol that skeptics dismissed as overly complex, unnecessarily powerful, and doomed to rapid obsolescence. The weapon before them, John Moses Browning's automatic pistol design, would within hours be designated the Model 1911. What none of them could foresee was that this supposedly outdated design would become the most widely issued sidearm of the Second World War, serve through 7 decades of American conflicts, and remain in elite military service more than a century later. The mathematics of this pistol's endurance were being written not in ballistics reports alone, but in a design philosophy so fundamental that it would outlast every technological trend that claimed to render it obsolete. The transformation from doubtful experiment to legendary weapon had already begun. The crisis that birthed America's most enduring sidearm erupted in the steaming jungles of the southern Philippines. The official Philippine-American War ended in 1902, but fierce combat continued through the Moro Rebellion, which lasted until 1913. American forces faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The Moro warriors, indigenous Muslim tribesmen of Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago, combined religious fervor with sophisticated combat tactics that rendered conventional American weapons nearly useless. Captain John Pershing, later to command American forces in World War I, documented engagements where Moro warriors absorbed multiple shots from standard-issue Colt Model 18, 92 revolvers chambered in 38 long Colt. These warriors, often in drug-induced states that suppressed pain sensation, continued their charges despite wounds that should have been incapacitating. American soldiers found themselves in desperate situations, emptying their revolvers into attacking Moros who still reached them with barong swords and killed them before finally succumbing to their injuries. The after-action reports painted a grim picture. 2 corpses lying near each other became a tragically common scene. A Moro warrior with 6 bullet wounds in his chest. An American soldier mutilated by blade strikes, his empty .38 caliber revolver still gripped in death. The military establishment recognized that the .38 long Colt cartridge lacked the decisive effect required for close-quarters jungle warfare. In desperate response, the Army resurrected an older weapon. The Colt single-action Army revolver, chambered in .45 Colt, had been the standard sidearm since 1873. It had proven devastatingly effective against Plains Indians during the American frontier wars. Though officially replaced by the lighter .38 caliber revolvers in 1892, stockpiles of these heavy revolvers still existed. When issued to troops fighting the Moros, the results were immediate and dramatic. The heavier .45 caliber bullet, weighing 230 grains compared to the .38 caliber's 150 grains, delivered the decisive effect that saved American lives. This battlefield experience crystallized a military requirement. American forces needed a modern sidearm, combining the rapid-fire capability of semi-automatic action with the proven effectiveness of the .45 caliber cartridge. In 1904, Colonel John Thompson and Major Louis Lagarde conducted systematic tests on both animal and human cadavers to determine the most effective pistol caliber. Despite scientific limitations acknowledged by modern experts, these tests drove the military's conclusion that any new service pistol should be no less than .45 caliber. The stage was set for a competition that would produce one of history's most significant firearms. In 1907, the United States Army Ordnance Department issued specifications for a new automatic pistol. The requirements were stringent. The weapon must chamber a .45 caliber cartridge. It must possess a magazine capacity of at least 6 rounds. The trigger pull must not exceed 6 pounds. It must eject spent cartridges vertically for ambidextrous operation. Most critically, it must demonstrate exceptional reliability under torture testing that would destroy lesser designs. 7 manufacturers submitted designs: Bergmann from Germany, Colt from Connecticut, Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken from Germany, Noble from Germany, Savage from Massachusetts, Webley from Britain, White Merrill from the United States. The testing board subjected each pistol to thousands of rounds of continuous firing, exposure to mud, dust, and water immersion, and deliberate attempts to induce malfunctions. By 1910, only 2 pistols remained in contention: the Savage Model 1907 and John Moses Browning's design, manufactured by Colt. Both weapons chambered the newly developed .45 automatic Colt pistol cartridge, a round specifically designed to replicate the effectiveness of the old .45 Colt revolver, while functioning reliably in semi-automatic actions. The final torture test began on March 3, 1911. Each pistol would fire 6,000 rounds over 2 consecutive days. Browning himself attended the tests, standing alongside Colt representatives as military observers documented every detail. The Savage pistol performed admirably for the first 1,000 rounds. Then malfunctions began appearing: failures to feed, failures to eject. By the end of testing, 37 malfunctions had accumulated across the 6,000 round count. The testing board documented every issue with clinical precision. Browning's .28's pistol told a different story. Through 6,000 rounds, it functioned flawlessly, 0 malfunctions. The official trials report stated the Colt functioned perfectly for all 6 1,000-round sessions. The demonstration was conclusive. At 75 feet, accuracy testing showed the Colt achieving a mean radius of 0.8555 inches compared to the Savage's 1.97 inches. Military observers noted that firing 500 rounds with the Savage produced fatigue equivalent to firing 2,000 rounds with the Colt. On March 29, 1911, the United States Army officially adopted John Moses Browning's design as the automatic pistol, caliber .45, model of 1911. The initial contract called for 30,262 pistols delivered to Springfield Armory. Production began immediately at Colt's facility in Hartford, Connecticut, and at the government-owned Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, April 6, 1917. The United States declared war on Germany. Within months, American forces began deploying to France as part of the American Expeditionary Forces. Among the equipment issued to officers and specialized troops were Model 1911 pistols. Many soldiers had never seen an automatic pistol before. The weapon represented cutting-edge military technology, a stark contrast to the revolvers that had armed previous generations. The trenches of Western Europe provided the Model 1911's first major combat test. In the close-quarters nightmare of trench warfare, where enemies often appeared at distances measured in feet rather than yards, soldiers needed weapons that could deliver instant, decisive results. The 1911 exceeded every expectation. October 8, 1918. Near Hill 223, Châtel-Chiéry, France. Corporal Alvin York found himself commanding 7 soldiers after his unit's officers had been killed or wounded. Their mission was to silence German machine gun positions that were inflicting heavy casualties on advancing American forces. York's squad had captured a German major and several soldiers, but suddenly came under fire from 35 German soldiers equipped with multiple machine guns. In the firefight that followed, 9 members of York's patrol were killed or wounded. York found himself in a partially exposed position, armed with his Model 1903 Springfield rifle and his Model 1911 pistol. Using the rifle, he began engaging the machine gun positions. German records indicate he fired with devastating accuracy. Then 6 German soldiers fixed bayonets and charged his position. York had emptied his rifle. He drew his Model 1911 pistol. In the span of seconds, he shot all 6 attackers before they could reach him. York later explained his technique. He shot them from back to front, furthest to nearest, like shooting wild turkeys. The front soldiers wouldn't realize the rear ones were being shot. The psychological impact on the remaining German soldiers was immediate. The major York had captured offered to order his men to surrender if York would stop shooting. When American forces reached York's position, they found him guarding 132 German prisoners, 4 officers, and 128 enlisted men. York was credited with killing at least 25 enemy soldiers using a combination of his rifle and pistol. He received the Medal of Honor for this action. His citations specifically documented the Model 1911's critical role when those 6 soldiers charged with bayonets. York's action became legendary, but it was far from unique. Across the Western Front, American soldiers reported the Model 1911's reliability and effectiveness. Officers praised its accuracy. Soldiers valued its power. The .45 caliber cartridge, firing a 230-grain bullet at approximately 830 feet per second, delivered the decisive effect that combat demanded. The war ended November 11, 1918. American industry had produced hundreds of thousands of Model 1911 pistols during the conflict. Combat experience had validated every design decision. The weapon that skeptics had called overly complex had proven utterly reliable under conditions that would have destroyed lesser firearms. Caked in mud, exposed to rain and snow, subjected to the brutal conditions of trench warfare, the Model 1911 functioned. Between the wars, military experience led to minor improvements. In 1926, the modified design was designated the Model 1911 A1. Changes included a shortened trigger, frame cutouts behind the trigger, an arched mainspring housing, a longer grip safety spur, a wider front sight, and simplified grip checkering. Pistols manufactured after serial number 700,000 received the A1 designation. These modifications refined the design without changing its fundamental operation. John Moses Browning passed away in 1926, just as his pistol entered this new phase of service. He had witnessed its success in World War I, though he could not foresee the extraordinary career that lay ahead. His genius lay not in following technological trends, but in understanding fundamental principles of mechanical design. The Model 1911 embodied those principles completely. September 1, 1939. Germany invaded Poland. Within 2 years, the United States would be drawn into the largest conflict in human history. The army began a massive mobilization that would eventually place millions of men under arms. Each soldier required equipment. The existing inventory of Model 1911 and Model 1911, A1 pistols, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, would prove completely inadequate for the war ahead. The industrial challenge was unprecedented. The military needed not thousands of pistols, but millions. Traditional firearms manufacturers lacked the capacity to meet this demand. The solution required transforming American industrial might into weapons production on a scale never before attempted. The government turned to companies with no firearms experience whatsoever. Remington Rand, a typewriter and office equipment manufacturer formed in 1927 from the merger of Remington Typewriter and Rand Cardex, converted a vacant Syracuse typewriter plant to pistol production. Union Switch and Signal, a railroad switching and signaling equipment manufacturer from Swissvale, Pennsylvania, organized by George Westinghouse in 1881, retooled to produce pistols. Singer Sewing Machine Company received an educational order intended to develop production capability and transfer expertise to other contractors. The Singer contract deserves special attention. Educational Order WOR-D396, issued April 17, 1940, represented a pre-war mobilization program under the Army Appropriations Act of 1938. The goal was achieving 100 pistols per hour production rate. While developing detailed manufacturing documentation other contractors could follow. Singer completed only 500 pistols between serial numbers S8000001 and S800000500 by December 1941. The company never achieved its production goals. The additional contract for 15,000 pistols was cancelled, and Singer's tooling was transferred to Remington Rand. Those 500 Singer pistols became the most valuable military, Model 1911, A1s ever produced. One sold at auction for $414,000 in 2017. Despite Singer's limited production, the educational order succeeded in its primary mission. The manufacturing documentation Singer developed enabled rapid industrial mobilization. Companies with no firearms experience learned to produce precision weapons at scale. The production numbers tell the story of American industrial capacity. Between 1941 and 1945, 5 manufacturers produced Model 1911 A1 pistols for military service. Remington Rand manufactured 877,751 pistols, becoming the most productive manufacturer and producing nearly 50% of the war's total at the lowest per unit cost. Ithaca Gun Company, an established firearms manufacturer from Ithaca, New York, produced 335,466 pistols and developed the stamped trigger assembly adopted by all manufacturers. Colt, the original manufacturer, produced approximately 410,000 pistols. Union Switch and Signal manufactured 55,000 pistols before their contract was reduced when they shifted to M1 carbine parts production. Singer's 500 educational order pistols completed the total. The combined production reached 1,878,742 pistols. This represented the largest single procurement of handguns in American military history to that point. A typewriter company became the most prolific manufacturer of military pistols. A railroad equipment manufacturer produced precision firearms. The transformation demonstrated American industrial flexibility and capacity in ways that would prove as decisive as any battlefield victory. The pistols these companies manufactured went everywhere American forces fought. Europe, the Pacific, North Africa. They equipped not only American forces but also Allied soldiers through Lend-Lease. British commandos carried them. Free French forces used them. Chinese soldiers fighting in Burma were armed with them. Soviet forces received them. The Model 1911 A1 became a truly global weapon. In the Pacific theater, the Model 1911 A1 proved particularly valued. The humid, corrosive environment of jungle warfare destroyed many weapons. Salt spray corroded metal. Mud jammed mechanisms, rain-soaked equipment. The Model 1911 A1's robust steel construction and simple design kept it functioning where more complex weapons failed. Marines island hopping across the Pacific carried them through swamps and coral beaches. The brutal reality of amphibious assaults meant soldiers often waded through surf with equipment submerged. The Model 1911 A1 continued functioning after such treatment. A simple field strip, cleaning and lubrication restored full operation. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. Each island campaign proved the pistol's value. Marines clearing Japanese bunkers and cave systems found the .45 caliber cartridge delivered decisive results at close range. The psychological effect of the large-bore weapon in confined spaces proved as valuable as its physical characteristics. Japanese soldiers who survived encounters with American forces consistently reported fear of the large-caliber American pistols. Soldiers in New Guinea and the Philippines relied on them in close-quarters jungle combat that echoed the weapon's origins fighting Moros 4 decades earlier. The 40-year circle from Philippine jungles to Philippine jungles, from Moro warriors to Japanese soldiers, validated every design decision made in 1911. The weapon proved as effective in 1945 as it had been conceptualized for 1902. The pistol saved countless American lives in situations far beyond conventional combat. Pilots downed over enemy territory used them for defense during evasion and escape. The compact size and reliability made it ideal for survival situations. Lieutenant Louis Zamperini, whose B-24 was shot down over the Pacific in May 1943, carried his Model 1911, A1 through 47 days adrift at sea before capture. Though he never needed to fire it, the pistol remained functional despite weeks of saltwater exposure. Paratroopers jumping behind enemy lines on D-Day and during Operation Market Garden carried them as secondary weapons when their primary weapons were damaged or ammunition exhausted. The pistol's reliability after parachute jumps, rough landings, and hours of combat made it invaluable. Tank crews, whose primary weapons were useless outside their vehicles, relied on Model 1911, A1s if forced to abandon damaged tanks. Numerous accounts document tank crews fighting their way to friendly lines with only their pistols after mechanical breakdowns or enemy fire disabled their vehicles. Navy personnel on ships used them to repel boarders and defend damage control parties. During kamikaze attacks, sailors fighting fires and rescuing wounded shipmates carried Model 1911, A1s for protection against infiltrators or as last resort weapons if their ship was boarded. The pistol's resistance to saltwater corrosion proved essential in the naval environment. In the European theatre, the weapon proved equally valuable. Airborne operations over Normandy, Holland, and Germany saw widespread pistol use. Officers leading infantry assaults carried them. Combat engineers clearing obstacles under fire needed weapons that functioned reliably. Military police securing rear areas and guarding prisoners relied on them. Every role where soldiers needed a dependable secondary weapon, the Model 1911A1 proved its worth. The winter of 1944 brought the Battle of the Bulge. American forces, caught by surprise in the Ardennes forest, fought desperate defensive actions in bitter cold. Weapons that had functioned perfectly in mild weather seized up in sub-zero temperatures. Lubricants thickened, actions froze. The Model 1911, A1, properly maintained with appropriate cold weather lubricants, continued functioning. Soldiers learned to keep their pistols inside their clothing when possible, using body heat to prevent freezing. The simple design meant that even if ice formed, a few minutes of warming restored function. Walter Walsh, legendary FBI agent who became a Marine Corps colonel, demonstrated the weapon's potential in trained hands. During action on Okinawa in 1944, Walsh killed a Japanese sniper from 90 yards away with a single Model 1911 pistol shot to the torso. This extraordinary feat, well documented in authoritative sources, including American riflemen, showcased what exceptional marksmanship could achieve with this platform. Walsh, who lived to 106 years old, became the FBI's oldest living former agent. August 15, 1945. Japan surrendered. The Second World War ended. The United States emerged as a superpower, its military equipped with weapons whose production had overwhelmed Axis industrial capacity. Among those weapons, the Model 1911 A1 had proven itself utterly reliable across every climate and every theatre. The post-war period brought new conflicts that would test the weapon under conditions its designers never imagined.